Maddox Thorne didn't wait for anyone, but tonight he waited. The Manhattan skyline flickered outside the towering glass windows of the Thorne International penthouse, but Maddox barely noticed. He checked his Rolex again. 39 minutes late. His jaw tightened. The meeting was supposed to be quick, just a courtesy sit-down with a new designer his assistant insisted had potential. He'd agreed out of boredom more than anything else. Now he was irritated and seconds from walking out. He stood from the sleek black leather chair, buttoning his tailored navy blue suit jacket with one fluid motion. "That's it," he muttered, heading for the elevator. The doors hadn't even opened when the conference room burst open and a woman stumbled in, breathless, cheeks flushed, and rain clinging to her coat. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, pushing damp strands of hair behind her ear. "The subway shut down. Then there was an accident on 5th, and I tried to get a cab, but no one would stop," and Maddox turned slowly. His eyes narrowed not in anger, but confusion. This girl wasn't what he expected. She wasn't polished or poised like the others who begged for his attention. She wasn't even wearing heels. Her coat was several seasons out of date, and her portfolio looked like it had been through war. But her eyes, they were wide, sincere, and apologetic. "I know I blew it," she said, shoulders sagging. "You don't have to give me a second. I promised I'd show you." Maddox stared at her. She extended her hand. "Palmer Bennett." He didn't shake it, but he didn't leave either. Instead, he exhaled slowly, walked back to his chair, and sat. "You've got 5 minutes. Palmer's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. She wasn't polished, but she was prepared. She laid out sketches like they were precious. Not just design stories. Each dress had a name, a purpose, a reason. She spoke with her hands. Her voice was passionate, full of life and nerves. "I don't want to make clothes that just look expensive," she said, holding up one of her pieces. "I want women to feel like they're stepping into their power, like they matter, like they're seen." Maddox didn't realize he was leaning forward until she stopped talking. He cleared his throat and sat back. "You're late. You're wet. And that pitch was raw." Palmer swallowed. He tapped a finger on the table. "But it wasn't bad." Her mouth parted. "Wait. Seriously. Don't get excited. I'm not signing anything tonight, but I'll send my team to your studio." Her smile was immediate and blinding. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet." Maddox stood again. "I don't hand out favors." "I'm not looking for a favor," she said, lifting her chin. "Just a chance." His eyes flicked over her again. Messy, persistent, honest to a fault. He nodded once. "You've got one." As he walked her to the elevator, she turned to him. "You didn't even look at your phone once. You were really going to leave, weren't you?" "I don't wait," Maddox said. She laughed. "Guess I'm the exception." He didn't say anything, just watched the elevator doors close on her still smiling face. The next morning, Maddox's assistant walked into his office, holding a coffee and a folder. "Here's the info on Palmer Bennett. She runs a tiny studio in Brooklyn. No investors. No debt. She's been working freelance and waitressing to fund her line." Maddox opened the folder. A candid photo was clipped to the front. Palmer laughing with a sketchpad in hand. His gaze lingered. "She's different," his assistant added. "She's late," Maddox replied, but it lacked bite. He closed the folder and pushed it aside. 3 days later, he showed up at her studio, unannounced. Palmer was on her knees, surrounded by fabric, when he walked in. She looked up, startled, a pencil tucked behind her ear. "You're not my assistant," she said. "You're not wearing shoes," he replied. She jumped to her feet. "What are you doing here?" "Checking on my potential investment." "You didn't call." "I don't call." Palmer crossed her arms. "I don't work well with ghosts." Maddox raised an eyebrow. "You always this bold?" "Only when I'm annoyed." He looked around the small, worn space tables stacked with fabric, a dress form wearing something half-finished and stunning, a coffee mug with a chipped lip. "You live here." "Sometimes." He turned back to her. "That's not sustainable." "No," she said. But it's all I've got. Maddox didn't know why he stayed, or why he sat on the wobbly stool by the window and asked her to show him what she was working on. But he did. And she did. They argued about fabrics, about vision, about what it meant to build something real. She challenged him in a way that no board member, no socialite, no investor ever had. And when he left, he felt something he hadn't felt in years alive. The next time he saw her, it was at a gala. She didn't know he'd invited her. His name wasn't on the invite. But when she stepped into the room wearing one of her own designs, a bold red with a neckline that made heads turn, he knew. Maddox couldn't take his eyes off her. She scanned the crowd, nervous but trying not to show it. He walked up behind her. "You clean up well." Palmer spun around, startled. "You?" He smiled. "Me? You invited me? I wanted to see how your work looked under real lights." "You could have just said that. I don't usually explain myself." "Well, maybe you should start." And just like that, she turned away, grabbing a glass of champagne. Maddox watched her go, something strange tugging in his chest. He didn't wait for people, but he waited for her. Again. "You're not mingling," Palmer said, glancing sideways as Maddox joined her near the edge of the rooftop terrace. The city stretched behind them in glittering silence, but her voice cut through the cool air like a thread pulled taut. "I don't mingle," he replied, adjusting his cufflink without looking at her. "I observe." "That sounds lonely," she said, her tone even, but her eyes never left the skyline. He looked at her then, really looked. The way her fingers tapped lightly against her glass, the subtle tension in her jaw that betrayed her calm exterior. She was nervous, but she wouldn't admit it. He hated how much he noticed. "You designed the dress for yourself," he said. Palmer turned to him, surprised. "Of course I did. I wasn't going to let someone else interpret my work for a night like this. You're not like the others here." "Meaning?" "They came to be seen. You came to be heard." She tilted her head, studying him. "Do you always talk like a man who's giving a TED Talk?" He chuckled, and it caught even him off guard. "No. Only when someone's trying to pretend they're not terrified of being in a room full of wolves." Palmer laughed, soft but full. "You're not wrong. I usually aren't." She raised a brow. "That sentence isn't grammatically correct." He shrugged. "Neither are you." Her eyes flashed with something he couldn't quite name, but it made him take a step closer. The energy between them shifted, tighter now, like a wire pulled between them, vibrating with something unspoken. "I don't fit here," she said suddenly, voice lower now, more honest. "This whole world, it's not cut out for people like me." "You think I was born in a penthouse?" he asked. "You weren't." He turned toward the glass railing, placing both hands on it. "My father ran numbers for small-time bookies. My mother worked nights in a bakery. My first apartment had rats bold enough to steal food off the counter while I was still cooking." She stared at him. "That's not in your Forbes profile. I don't let people write the truth. Why are you telling me?" He looked at her, the wind brushing a strand of hair across her cheek. He reached up, brushed it behind her ear, not tender, not casual, but deliberate. "I don't know," he said, "but I hate that I am." A string quartet had started playing inside. The music drifted out, elegant and soft, but neither of them moved. Palmer's phone buzzed in her clutch. She ignored it. "Who are you avoiding?" he asked. "My landlord," she said with a half smile. "He thinks I'm dodging rent." "Are you?" "Not dodging. Strategically delaying." He laughed again, quieter this time. "You're a piece of work. And you're a piece of something I can't say out loud at a gala." He stepped closer again. "Say it." She met his gaze, steady as stone. "You don't intimidate me." "No," he said. "But I want to." "Why?" "Because if I don't, I might start feeling something." Palmer looked away first. Inside, someone called his name. A board member. Maddox didn't even glance toward the voice. "You should go," she said. "Your world's waiting. I'd rather stay in yours." Palmer blinked. "Why?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket, pulled out a small white card, and placed it in her hand. Be at this address tomorrow. 7 sharp. Bring your sketches. What is it? An opportunity. She looked down. This is the Upper East Side. I know. Whose place is this? He was already walking away. Yours. For as long as you need it. Palmer stared after him, stunned. The next morning, she stood outside the building's 6 floors of limestone, ivy-laced balconies, and a doorman who barely blinked when she gave her name. The elevator opened directly into a space that didn't feel real. Warm wood, towering windows, and a wall of mirrors angled to reflect light across an open studio space. A note on the table read only, work. She didn't sit. She walked the entire space, touching the smooth marble counters, the racks already stocked with every fabric she'd ever dreamed of using. A sewing station with state-of-the-art machinery. A fridge filled with sparkling water and croissants from a bakery she couldn't pronounce. He'd given her more than space. He'd given her a future, but she didn't trust it. Not yet. That night, she found herself pacing. Not designing. Not sketching. Just pacing. Then, without thinking, she grabbed her coat and headed out. The Thorne Plaza Tower loomed like a fortress, but the receptionist barely blinked as she announced herself. Maddox's office was on the top floor. She didn't wait for permission. She marched in just as he was finishing a call. He looked up, didn't seem surprised. You should have asked me first, she said. I don't ask. Why me? He stood, buttoning his jacket. Because you're the first person I've met in years who makes me forget to check my schedule. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I don't give things away, he added. I invest. And I never invest in something I don't believe in. I didn't ask for charity. Good. Because I don't give it. She walked toward his desk, slow, deliberate. You made me feel like I mattered. Then you left. I had to. Why? Because if I stayed, I wouldn't have stopped myself. A silence stretched between them. Palmer looked at him, eyes sharper now. What do you want from me? His answer was quiet. Everything. And just like that, her guard cracked. 1 second. That was all it took. She stepped forward. So did he. Their hands didn't touch. But the space between them? It burned. Then say it, she whispered. But he didn't. He turned away. And for the first time she saw it. Fear. Not hers. His. Palmer didn't go back to the penthouse studio the next day. She couldn't. Not after the way Maddox had looked at her like he wanted her closer and was terrified of what would happen if she got there. She spent the morning stitching in the corner of her own cramped workspace in Brooklyn, trying to lose herself in muslin and thread. But her hands kept faltering. Her thoughts kept drifting back to his voice, low and steady, saying he wanted everything. Everything. He hadn't said it like a man making a promise. He'd said it like a man issuing a warning. By late afternoon, the door to her studio clicked open. She didn't look up until a familiar pair of Ferragamo shoes stopped just shy of her cutting table. This is where you hide? Maddox's tone was dry, but there was something else under it, an edge of uncertainty. Palmer set down her scissors. You shouldn't be here. You didn't show up. He glanced around the room, his gaze landing on a half-finished piece draped over a mannequin. Did I misread something? I don't do well with unfinished sentences and half-confessions, she said, wiping her hands on her apron. You said you wanted everything. Then you walked away. I didn't walk away. I gave you space. Space is what you give someone you don't want to deal with. Maddox stepped further inside. I'm not used to dealing with people who make me question every move I make. You think I know what I'm doing? Palmer's voice cracked before she caught it. I've been making it up as I go, hustling for scraps. And then you show up with custom studios and rooftop galas and feelings you won't even finish articulating. I'm not good at this. I don't need perfect. I need real. Maddox didn't respond right away. Then, without looking at her, he asked, "Do you know how many people have tried to get close to me for what I could give them?" Palmer folded her arms. "Probably everyone." He finally looked at her. "Exactly. I've built empires with people I don't trust. I've walked away from friends I grew up with because they started seeing me as a vault instead of a person. And then you barged into my office with rain in your hair and designs that made zero sense to anyone but you. And you stayed." "I did. And I haven't stopped thinking about you since." Palmer's throat tightened, but she didn't speak. "I came here because I need to know," Maddox said. "If I actually let myself feel this. Are you going to run the first time it gets messy?" She stepped around the table slowly until they were just a foot apart. "Depends. On what? Whether you're going to keep hiding behind power plays and money." He exhaled. "I don't know how to be anything else." "Then learn," she said simply. There was silence between them again, but this time it wasn't sharp. It was full-charged. "I have meetings in London starting tomorrow," he said after a moment. "For how long?" "For days." Palmer looked down at her fingers, still stained with chalk. "And when you get back? I want to take you somewhere." "Where?" He offered the smallest hint of a smile, not cocky, not calculated. "Just hopeful. Someplace that doesn't come with expectations or contracts." She studied him. "You still think you can buy your way through this?" "No," he said, lowering his voice. "But I want to show you what it looks like when I give something without expecting anything in return." Palmer hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." He stepped back as if afraid to touch her too soon. "I'll call when I land. I won't answer if it's after midnight. I'll make sure it's not." He turned toward the door, but paused. "Do you want me to leave the penthouse studio unlocked?" Palmer picked up her scissors again. "I've got keys now, remember?" He nodded once, then left. The second he was gone, she sank onto the stool beside the mannequin and buried her face in her hands. For days. She could wait 4 days. But she wasn't going to waste them. By the time Maddox's jet touched down at JFK, Palmer had transformed the penthouse workspace. The racks were no longer filled with blank fabric, they held finished pieces. A full capsule collection. 10 looks, each one tailored, structured, and alive with bold lines and unexpected details. When Maddox stepped inside that evening, he froze. Palmer stood near the windows, her back to the door, adjusting the collar on a mannequin. She didn't turn. "You said you wanted to see what it looked like when I trusted you with everything," she said. "I did." She stepped aside. "Then here it is." The clothes weren't just beautiful, they were a declaration. A collision of who she was and what she'd survived. Each piece carried her signature, but with more precision than before. More purpose. Maddox walked between the racks, touching nothing, his expression unreadable. "You did all this in 4 days?" he asked. "You said you were coming back." He turned to her. "I almost didn't." "Why?" "Because I was afraid of what it would mean if I did. And now? I'm still afraid," he admitted. "But I'm not walking away." Palmer walked toward him, every step deliberate. "Good." He looked at her, really looked. "There's something else." She waited. "I pulled your name for Fashion Week." Her eyes widened. "You, what?" "I leveraged a few favors. You're showing in 3 weeks. Prime slot. Main tent." Palmer blinked. "That's not how it works." "It is when I say it does." She stared at him, stunned. "You didn't even ask me. I knew you'd say no." She took a breath, stepping back. "Maddox, you're ready. Don't act like you're not. This is my name on the line, and I'm betting everything on it." Palmer shook her head, torn between disbelief and something dangerously close to joy. "You're insane." "I'm in love with you," he said. The words landed like thunder. She didn't speak. He took a step forward. "I didn't plan to say it like that. But you did. Because I meant it." Palmer's voice was barely audible. "Say it again. I'm in love with you." He didn't hesitate. "And I don't want to waste another second acting like I'm not." She reached for him in the next breath, pulling him into a kiss that wasn't soft or tentative. It was full of the days they'd lost, the doubts they'd shed, and the fire they'd been too afraid to name. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "Then don't waste another second." And this time he didn't. The lights of the main tent dimmed. Palmer stood just inside the curtained wing, heart pounding against her ribs, fists clenched so tightly around the headset in her hand that her knuckles had turned white. The music began low, moody, orchestral. Her show. The models began their walk, one at a time, moving like poetry in motion. Each piece shimmered with her signature structured, sharp, unapologetically bold. The audience didn't know her name yet, but they would. By the end of this night, they would. "I've never seen a lineup like this before," said the casting director beside her, peeking out from behind the curtain. "It's like you engineered emotion into fabric." Palmer didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat was too tight. Somewhere beyond the runway, in the second row, Maddox sat with his elbows on his knees, watching the collection unfold with an intensity that made people glance at him twice. He wasn't texting. He wasn't checking the time. He wasn't networking. He was watching her become exactly who she was meant to be. When the final model turned, the audience rose to their feet before the music even finished. The applause was deafening. Palmer stood frozen, headset slipping from her fingers. The show coordinator nudged her forward. She stepped onto the runway, blinking into the blinding lights. The crowd didn't know her yet. They cheered like they did, like they'd been waiting for her. And in that sea of strangers, her eyes found only one man. Maddox didn't clap. He stood, hands stuffed in his pockets, face unreadable. But his eyes, they burned with something deeper than pride. After the show, Palmer slipped through the back corridors of the venue. She needed air. She needed quiet. Her hands still trembled as she reached the alley behind the tent, leaning against the brick wall, letting the cool air hit her cheeks. "You ran again," said a voice behind her. She turned. Maddox was watching her, sleeves rolled to his forearms, tie gone, expression bare. "I needed to breathe," she said. He walked toward her until he was close enough for her to see the tension in his jaw. "You just made the entire fashion world sit up and shut up. You should be celebrating. I don't know how to do that yet." He studied her, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Then start with this. What is it? Open it." She unfolded it slowly, eyes scanning the contents. A deed. Her name. Property listing. A downtown storefront space with high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows. Her breath caught. "This is yours. The lease is signed. You can move in next month. You said you weren't going to give me things. I'm not giving it to you. I'm investing. In you. In us." Palmer stared at the deed, then back at him. "This is a lot. I don't want to just be the man who helped you build your name," he said. "I want to be the one who builds the life with you after." She looked down. "I don't want to owe you anything." "You don't," he said quietly. "But I want you to have everything anyway." She folded the paper again, slower this time. "And what do you get?" He stepped closer. "You." Palmer felt the weight of the moment settle into her chest. "I'm not easy. I'm not asking for easy." There was a beat of silence. "Then what are you asking for?" she whispered. He took her hand. Not possessive, certain. "I want you to come with me to Italy next week. There's a villa I bought years ago. I've never taken anyone there." She blinked. "Why me?" "Because I've built everything in my life to keep people out. And now all I want to do is let you in." Palmer's heart pounded. "You're not scared anymore?" "I am," he admitted. "But I'm more scared of what happens if I don't try." She looked at him, really looked. The man who once stood behind towering glass walls now stood bare in front of her. No suit. No mask. Just Maddox. "Okay," she said. He blinked. "Okay. I'll go." The next week, the villa set nestled between hillsides in Umbria, surrounded by vineyards and olive groves. The air smelled like rosemary and sunshine. Palmer stood barefoot on a stone terrace, wearing a robe 2 sizes too big, sketchpad balanced on her knee as the morning light shifted across the page. Maddox stepped out behind her, holding 2 mugs. "You're sketching again." She nodded. "I'm thinking about the next line. You just launched your first." I don't want to stop. He handed her the mug. Don't. They sat in silence for a moment before she looked over at him. What happens now? He leaned back in the chair beside her. We build. A life. A world. She let out a soft laugh. You don't do anything small, do you? I waited for you, he said. That wasn't small. She turned toward him, expression softening. You really did. I'd wait again. She leaned in and kissed him. When they pulled apart, she whispered, you won't have to. That night, the villa's courtyard glowed with lanterns suspended from olive branches. Long tables lined with candles and fresh bread stretched beneath the stars. Maddox had flown in the entire team who helped Palmer build her collection. Not for a launch. Not for press. Just to say thank you. Palmer stood beside him, fingers laced with his, watching the people she once struggled beside now laugh and toast under a Tuscan sky. You know, she said, I once thought the most powerful thing a man could do was open a door. He looked at her. And now? Now I know it's standing beside a woman while she opens her own. He kissed her temple. Then let's build doors for the rest of your life. And they did. Together. The villa's stone walls breathed warmth even in March. Wildflowers had begun to bloom along the hillside and the scent of lavender drifted in through the open balcony doors. Palmer stood in the kitchen, barefoot and wrapped in one of Maddox's shirts, stirring a pot of something she was only half sure she wasn't burning. Behind her, Maddox leaned against the counter with his arms crossed, watching her with quiet amusement. You're seriously going to let that boil over while pretending you know what you're doing? He asked. I'm experimenting, she said, not looking up. You said we should try new things. I meant sailing or pottery. Not setting fire to my grandmother's cookware. Palmer turned and held up the wooden spoon like a sword. You're welcome to take over. I'd rather risk food poisoning and watch you try. She narrowed her eyes. You're brave. I love you, he said. Like it explained everything. She froze, spoon still raised, then lowered it slowly. You've said that before. Not like this, he said, pushing off the counter and walking to her. Not when it was quiet. Not when we had nowhere to be and no one to impress. She looked into his eyes. I love you too. He kissed her forehead, then took the spoon from her hand and stirred the sauce with one practiced swirl. You were burning it. I was not. You were definitely burning it. You're very rude for someone who just declared eternal devotion. I never said eternal. She raised a brow. He gave a long suffering sigh. Fine. Eternal. But only if you promise not to kill me with your cooking before the year's out. I make no promises. When the pasta was plated and the sun had dipped low across the hills, they ate at the small table by the window. There was no music, no staff, no distractions, just the clinking of forks and the occasional laugh when Palmer tried to pretend she liked Maddox's wine suggestion. He poured her another glass anyway. Have you thought about the storefront? He asked, refilling his own glass. I have, she said, setting down her fork. I want to do something different with it. How different? She leaned forward, excitement blooming on her face. Not just a showroom. I want a space where emerging designers can create, collaborate, show their pieces without having to beg for a slot or a sponsor. You want to share it? Not share. Multiply, she said. I got this chance because you saw something in me. I want to pass that forward. Create something that matters. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. I'll help you build it. I want to do it myself, she said gently. But I'd love your advice. Once in a while. He reached across the table and took her hand. Then I'll give it. Later that night, they lay in bed with the windows open and the breeze curling around them like a second blanket. Palmer rested her head on his chest, her fingers tracing an invisible pattern along his sternum. I never thought I'd get this, she murmured. What? A life that felt like mine. One where I'm not just surviving. Maddox ran his hand through her hair. You've built everything you have. I just cleared a few obstacles. You gave me space to believe I could. I never gave you anything you didn't already deserve. She looked up at him. You're really not going back to New York next week? I've got a team running things there. And I'm not needed at every board meeting. She frowned. That doesn't sound like the Maddox Thorne I met. That man built walls. I'm learning to build doors. She smiled. That line would be cheesy if someone else said it. But it works for me? Only because you mean it. They lay in silence for a while, the flicker of candlelight throwing soft shadows across the ceiling. Everything felt still but not stagnant. Like the beginning of something new, not the end of something old. The next morning, they drove into the village, walking hand in hand through the open-air market. Palmer stopped to smell bunches of herbs, to admire baskets of lemons, to speak to the vendors in her slowly improving Italian. Maddox followed her, letting her take the lead without comment. At one stand, an older woman looked between them, then said something in rapid Italian that made Palmer blush. What did she say? Maddox asked as they walked away. She said I looked like a woman who finally found her home. He stopped walking, tugged her gently to face him. Did you? She nodded without hesitation. Yes. 2 months later, the storefront opened. The space had been transformed. Exposed brick, soft light fixtures, and workstations along the walls. The racks held not just Palmer's designs, but pieces from 6 other emerging designers she'd selected herself. Each one had a story, a voice, a vision. On opening night, Maddox stood by the back wall, watching her speak to a young designer with a nervous smile and a trembling voice. Palmer listened, nodded, then placed a hand on the girl's shoulder and said something that made her beam. When Palmer finally made her way to him, Maddox handed her a glass of sparkling water and nodded toward the crowd. They already adore you. They adore the idea. The space. The chance. He leaned close. They adore you. She rested her head against his shoulder. I'm happy. You deserve it. I love you, she whispered. I know, he said, kissing her hair. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget why. 6 months after the storefront opening, they were married in the garden at the villa. Only 20 guests. No press. No spectacle. Palmer wore a gown she designed with her own hands. Maddox kept his vows short, but his voice cracked halfway through them. She kissed him before the officiant could finish speaking. Afterward, they danced under strings of lights hung between trees, the sound of violins mingling with crickets and laughter. Maddox kissed her in the middle of the dance floor and whispered something against her lips that made her laugh, then tear up, then pull him closer. They didn't need to say it again. It was written in every breath they took together, in the life they built, in the love they chose. And they never stopped choosing it.